she's asking about language, and if the New Testament's written in Greek, and Greek's a different language, and it has different nuances, and it might be more elastic, and you can express things differently in Greek than you can in English. What do you? And so, so to be a New Testament scholar, you have to learn Greek. I mean, that's just. And so when I read the New Testament, I read it in Greek because it's the only way you can really get the nuances. And it ends up mattering for how you interpret things. And part of the complication when you're talking about the historical Jesus is that Jesus didn't speak Greek. Jesus spoke Aramaic. Aramaic was the language of Palestine. Now, I said the highly educated people spoke Greek, but Jesus wasn't highly educated. That seems weird, but he came from Nazareth. Nazareth was a one-horse town. They've excavated Nazareth. There was nothing there. It was a dismal life, and so there weren't schools of higher learning there. So Jesus was not highly educated. I'm not saying he wasn't smart, or incredibly wise, or incredibly insightful, witty, or any of that. I'm just saying he wasn't highly educated. Didn't go to school. He didn't know Greek. He spoke Aramaic. So the problem is when you open your English Bible and you read the Sermon on the Mount, you're reading the words of Jesus. Suppose Jesus said these words. Well, you're reading them in English, which is a translation of the Greek, but the Greek is a translation of the Aramaic. And so if you're really going to study this stuff, you've got to do it in Greek, and then if you're studying the words of Jesus, you have to put them back, you've got to retranslate them back into Aramaic and see what they meant in Aramaic. It's really tricky, but sometimes it pays off. I'll give you an example. There are some sayings of Jesus that make better sense in Aramaic than they make in Greek. Okay, I'll give you one example. So there's a saying in the Gospel of Mark that is a very puzzling saying that nobody realizes is puzzling until you point it out to them. This is the saying. It says, Jesus has done something on the Sabbath. He's healed a guy on the Sabbath, and his opponents are upset with him for working on the Sabbath. And Jesus is trying to explain to them that it's okay to heal on the Sabbath, contrary to their rules. And so Jesus says to them, Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. Therefore, the Son of Man is the Lord of the Sabbath. It doesn't make any sense. Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. Therefore, the Son of Man is the Lord for the Sabbath. So I tell my students that when in the Bible, when they come across a therefore, they should always ask, what is that therefore there for? Why does the fact that Sabbath was made for humans and not the other way around make Jesus, the Son of Man, the Lord of the Sabbath? That doesn't make any sense. But, in other words, it's a non sequitur. But if you put it back into Aramaic, it makes sense. Because in Aramaic, the word man and the word Son of Man is the same word. Baranash. That's the word, Baranash, Son of Man. So, or man. So what if Jesus said this in Aramaic, it would be this. Sabbath was made for Baranash, not Baranash for the Sabbath. Therefore, Baranash is the Lord of the Sabbath. See? Now it makes sense. Humans are lords of the Sabbath, not Sabbath lords of the humans. So it makes sense. But it only makes sense when you transfer it back into Aramaic. What happened is when this thing got circulated and somebody translated that saying into Greek, they translated the first two Baranashes as man and the third one as Son of Man, so they would say something about Jesus in particular, even though it made nonsense of the saying. See what I mean?